Welcome to Sleepless in St. Canard, where nostalgia replaces REM cycles. I'm Kitty.
And I'm Ange.
And we haven't slept
in 30 years.
This is a podcast about the 90s Disney cartoon Darkwing Duck, and of course, the 2024 Dynamite Comics Justice Ducks, where the Lorax will probably not return. But what if he did, though? What if he did? I am curious about this. I hope that they use the real villains, but I'm not optimistic about that because folks do like to make up new big bads. I guess I will find out soon enough as Ange regales me with the tales of ducks and not DuckTales.
Just of the justice variety.
Of the ducks and not ducks. Oh, I used to be one.
We covered the Dynamite Darkwing Duck issues, and they kind of, in the final issue of that series, we had the Justice Ducks show up at the very end, and we're saying, oh, okay, maybe that's how they move into this next series. So we do have the Justice Ducks with their own comic book series, and as of us recording it, it has already ended. There are a total of 5 issues, so not as long as Negaduck. Negaduck got 8 issues. But it was a pretty good run, so it's interesting because I already know, obviously, how this all played out. But Kitty, I don't think you know a darn thing about this comic, do you?
I have never known a thing a day in my life. And that applies to most things, but mostly these comic books. I have not even glimpsed them.
I'll tell you a few things. I will tell you that the artist from the Darkwing Duck Dynamite run returns to do the artwork. That's Carlo Loro. Okay. But there is a new writer by the name of Roger Langridge. So a departure from Amanda Dibert, who did the Darkwing run. So this series features not just Darkwing. It's, the whole cast of the Justice Ducks, who I assume people listening to this podcast have some background.
You should know by now, guys.
Knowledge.
We've been talking about them for years.
Even though we have not actually covered the Justice Ducks episode in this podcast yet, it is the characters of Steggmutt, Gizmoduck, Neptuna, and Morgana Macabre, and then, of course, Darkwing, and kind of Launchpad and Gosling.
You started with the most important one first.
Of course.
Lead it off with the superhero of the team, Steggmutt, everyone's darling.
Everyone's favorite character. So we're going to find out how exactly they get their own series and what it's about and everything. And do you want me to tell you about any of the upcoming villains, or do you want it to be a surprise?
That's up to you. I'm just here for the ride.
I guess I'll let you in on the ride. So one thing I will say in advance is that as I was reading every issue, there was one thing that kept irking me about every reoccurring villain. And then in the 5th issue, it actually had an explanation that made me go, oh, okay, that checks out. And I was not bothered by it as much anymore. But we're going to have to wait till we get all the way to issue 5 for that to become relevant. So I'll let that...
That kind of reminds me of... segue real quick. There's a season of What We Do in the Shadows where Laszlo is being uncharacteristically kind to Colin Robinson, the energy vampire. And you're like, why is this happening? And then the final episode, you find out why. And you're like, oh, thank God.
It all makes sense.
Now. Anyway, so that's what that made me think of.
It's not a big thing, but it was just something. There was a running theme with the villains in this, and I was just like, why is this theme continuing? And then it turned out there was actually a reason for it. So we'll get there. But for now, we start out with a beautiful day in St. Canard, this sort of day where you might go for a walk, enjoy the sunshine. And immediately we're met with Steggmutt, who is bending a large piece of what looks to be a steel beam.
That was a way better way to end that sentence than I thought.
Just bending a steel beam, and
just bending over.
And there's a whole crowd watching him, and someone says, that Steggmutt sure has a whole lot of muscle. And someone else says, I heard he got it from a scientific experiment. Say, do you think they'd experiment on me if I asked nicely? I assume this is Hulk references, maybe? It turns out that Steggmutt is basically busking. He's tying these steel beams into knots, and he has a hat out, and he's asking people if they can to put some coins in the hat. The donations all go to the St. Canard Home for confused goldfish.
Checks out.
Those poor fish. They really need the help. So then he asks for a volunteer for his next trick, and a whole bunch of people are very excited to be volunteers for this crazy-ass dinosaur. I guess they've all gotten over the fact that he's a dinosaur, because I know in the TV show when he shows up, everybody's like, a dinosaur!
Yeah, I feel like him drawing crowds is a new thing, too. They don't, I guess, no, I was going to say there aren't really crowd scenes because they wanted to save money, but there's definitely a few crowd scenes in the show, but I feel like he's only in, 3 episodes.
Yeah. One of them is his own debut episode, the other is Justice Duck's, and then I guess if you count the pirate episode.
Oh, yes, Darkwing Doubloon. Okay.
So he's got a rope, and they're doing, I guess, tug-of-war. He's gone one end of the rope, and he's getting a guy, really tough guys, to pull on the other end. And I guess he wins because the guys end up all tied up, and one of them says, "He's nearly as strong as my mother."
Oh, okay.
Sheepishly, Steggmutt says, "Well, thank you anyways for participating," and then for his grand finale, he will, without assistance of any kind, lift a truck above his head. And everybody's like, impossible! It'll be a trick. Nobody's that strong, not even Steggmutt, which I think is funny because, this is a world with, villains and heroes, and I feel like surely St. Canard has seen everything, including, Darkwing Duck buffing out and lifting up the building.
Yes. He did do that, didn't he?
So he starts trying to lift it, and he's having some trouble, and then all of a sudden, the truck just lifts up into the air and flies away, and he's like, huh? But then we find out that it's because a giant Titan-like creature, not like Attack on Titan, that would be absolutely terrifying, but more like an alien Titan, has picked up the truck and is saying, "Arr! Ixcareem, Exacreem," and everybody, including Steggmutt, screams and runs away. And Steggmutt says, "Oh, I need to find the Justice Ducks." And this is when we get the title of the comic, which is Tales of the Strange. Can you imagine duckified versions of Attack on Titan? That would be absolutely horrific.
I'm sure someone's drawn it already. Oh, he looks like something. Some kind of Marvel thing.
I'm not very brushed up on Marvel and DC lore, but I have a feeling there's a lot of references in this that kind of pay homage to that.
Yes. Also, it's kind of funny that he's just like, I'm going to pick up this truck, and nobody even sees this giant guy walking up to take the truck away from Steggmutt. Seems very on brand. But yeah, he's big. He's got a metal helmet thing with big horns, and he's kind of Mega Man-y looking.
Kind of like a Colossus or something.
Yeah, like a RoboCop looking type deal, but not Gizmoducky.
Well, Gizmoducky is in the next panel.
Hey!
Steggmutt is encouraging people to run as news travels fast, and then we have all of the Justice Ducks watching, I guess, hearing the news. There's Gizmoduck, who is listening on his arm radio that says, "Going live to downtown St. Canard as a giant creature calling itself Babu smashes up the joint." And Gizmoduck says, "Gadzooks! Gizmoduck must get there at once." And then we see Morgana gazing into a crystal ball. "Morgana, trouble is afoot."
Tells her the trouble's afoot, the crystal ball.
It seems so. It doesn't really say who the source is. I assume it's Steggmutt, since he was the one that's like, "I'll call the Justice Ducks." And then we got Neptuna on the beach, and she says, "Intruders on my beach. Neptuna will give them what for." And then finally, Darkwing, who can see the Titan in the distance, and says, "Launch pad, bring the thunderquack, we've got trouble." We see that Goslin and LP are up in Darkwing Tower. It looks like they're playing Mario Kart from the looks of it, or at least a duck version of Mario Kart. And Launchpad says that he's on his way. Goslin, you stay here where it's safe, which is like the classic thing they always tell Goslin. But I think I can't remember. I haven't read this in a while. I think she does, in fact, stay still this little episode. And she says, "You can't fool me. You're just leaving because I'm winning." And then Launchpad fist bumps her and says, "Tell you what, we'll bring back some ice cream. Deal?" And Goslin says, "Deal." And I'll show you that page too, since you get to see your favorite Gizmoduck. Next to Herb, of course.
Yes. He's not in these, I assume. He was an honorary member last time because of the tracking device on his Quackaware, but I'm not going to get my hopes up very high that Herb makes an appearance. Here they are. Gang's all here.
Gang's all here. The Justice Ducks assemble, and I think it's kind of funny that Neptunia enters by a sewer that just kind of bursts up from the ground, like with water, which is pretty cool entrance, I gotta say.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
So everybody's there, and somehow it's Steggmutt that seems to be giving the orders, which is kind of funny. He says, "Justice Ducks, hooray, we need to get people to safety." And Neptunia says, "More than that, we need to stop the threat. Fill us in." And so Steggmutt tries to explain that he doesn't really know where this thing came from because he was busy raising money for Goldfish. And then he's upset because he left the money for the goldfish behind. Those poor fish. They're going to suffer. It's always the innocent ones that suffer in these takeovers.
Moment of silence for the goldfish.
Bloop, bloop.
Glub, glub.
And Darkwing starts to suggest some sort of diversion is required, but he's cut off because Neptunia goes on about the way she sees it. "We're meant to think that thing came from the ocean, but if it did, I'd know. It must have just appeared somehow. If it can appear, it can disappear, but we can figure that part out later. We need to bring her down." And then Darkwing again says, "Well, I suggest," and then she cuts him off and says, "I suggest we split up. Darkwing used the Thunderquack, Steggmutt, brute force, Morgana and Gizmoduck came back." And then Darkwing looks at us, the audience, the fourth wall, with this look of like, what the fuck does this bitch think she's doing?
The fuck you say?
Who does she think this comic is about? Because surely it's all about Darkwing.
Yes, I mean, it doesn't have his name for once. Oh, yeah, there he is. Angry face.
He's just like, "You seeing this?
Split the party." They look really cute, though.
I feel like the artist really came into his own and he developed his own style. We sort of saw that with the evolution of the Darkwing comics, and it definitely was carried over into this. And I think it works pretty well for the tone of the series. So we've got Darkwing, who surprisingly actually listened, I guess, to Neptunia because he has Launchpad and the Thunderquack, and they get close to the monster, and they throw down a ladder, and Darkwing tries to shoot it in the face with the gas gun. While, I guess he uses tear gas, and while the Titan is like, "Rrr," and covering his eyes, Steggmutt charges and attempts to hit it, and makes sure to apologize while doing so, because that's the kind of guy he is. And then, meanwhile, Morgana has a hot dog stand that she's trying to magically lift up to change into a creature not of land, and she turns it into some kind of lobster creature.
Okay.
And it's like, oops. I guess that's the diversion. And then she tries again and turns it into an octopus and says, "Much better," which Neptunia proceeds to ride like a horse to give this brute what for. And the octopus wraps a tentacle around the leg of the beast, the Titan, and trips it, and it falls over while screaming, "Excream!" and is very upset. Neptunia comments that works well with shoelaces as well, and then says, "Gizmoduck, he's all yours."
Get him, Giz. I like the one of the Titan guy. Flapping his arms around. When he falls over, like, stuff flies into the air. There's like a whole building that gets uprooted and stuff. It's cute.
Thousands of lives lost that day. But it's fine.
The insurance alone to live in St. Canard.
Yep. So Gizmoduck talks about how he's got some high tensile polymer cables that will secure the monstrous miscreant until we figure out what to do with it. Neptunia says, "Good work, but now they have to figure out where it came from." And Steggmutt brings up how it just sort of appeared out of nowhere. Even I guess, because, you mentioned earlier that even the people who were watching him didn't seem to notice it just show up. Just kind of appeared. And everyone's like, "Impossible. It does sound kind of nutty." And Morgana says, nuttier than that. And they look up and there's a flying saucer. Aliens.
Ooh.
And they're all just kind of staring, mouths agape. Steggmutt says he doesn't know whether to be terrified or excited. More aliens appear, more giant titans that look like various, I suspect. I want to say one of them kind of looks like Big Barda, if that's the correct name for the character. And I don't know about the rest of them. I will show you. But one of them introduces itself, like they're all talking like cavemen. One says, me, Boomga. And the other says, me, Forwar. Me, Nuclo. And me, Dictor. And they're all screaming for Ix-Scream.
I scream, you scream, we all scream for Ix-Scream. This is all about ice cream. I corrected. Oh, that guy's like an alligator. He's cute.
Looks like he's wearing
like
a cake/circus tent for a hat.
He's accessorized to the nines. I like him.
So they have come for something, and one of them punches the ground and nearly squishes Darkwing, who shakes his fist and calls him a ridiculous creature. If you damaged my cape, you'll be hearing from my tailor. And they just keep screaming, "Urgh, Ix-Scream."
So they're all big like the first guy?
Yes, they're all giant. They're all titans. That's what I'm calling them. And Neptuna says they have a bit of a limited vocabulary and can't figure out what they want. But if they can figure it out, maybe they can stop them. The lady with the big red hair, Titan, she picks up a car and shakes out some poor, terrified family of like a mom and a little duck son. And Gizmoduck, who is watching, has this airbag in his armor, in his chest armor, so he shoots it out and he catches the mom and the duckling. It looks kind of funny, though. Kind of looks like he's got giant boobs that are punching people. I need to show you this.
Gizmoduck's big naturals.
Just big naturals.
Not be contained by the armor anymore. Dang, Gizmoduck. They're like quadruple Z's.
Saving lives.
There you go. Love it.
Neptuna blows on her seashell horn and summons some whales from the ocean, which I guess they shoot water out of their blowholes at one of the titans, the one that looks like a robot, which seems to work. And electrocutes it. The alligator dude is peeping over a building, and the Justice Ducks are like, we're gonna be here for a while. We need to figure this out. And we promised Goslin some ice cream, too. I believe that's Launchpad saying that. And Darkwing says, what did you say? That's when Neptuna puts it all together that they're saying ice cream, which you called it.
Mm-hmm. We all like ice cream.
Although Darkwing says, this is a stretch. You have to admit this is a stretch. But Neptuna tells him to STFU and asks Morgana to turn a giant garbage dumpster into a big tub of ice cream. So she does that, and then Gizmoduck whips out a microphone and says, attention, big creepy monsters. Dessert is served. I repeat, dessert is served. And then the monsters are very happy. They whip out their spoons, and they rush over. And Launchpad says, well, I will be darned. You were right. We seem to have neutralized the threat. But why travel millions of miles just for ice cream? That's Neptuna. Steggmutt reasons that it depends on the ice cream. So it's only at this point in time, and I have to kind of roll my eyes. Why didn't they do this earlier? Gizmoduck says, I have a built-in translator in my suit that can handle any earthen language, so why don't I try and translate these guys? And it's like, why didn't you do that earlier? But okay.
He had all that titty clog in his brain.
I guess so. And Darkwing points out that this isn't an Earth language from the looks of, the fact that they came in a giant saucer. And Gizmoduck, he's like blepping like a cat. He's got his tongue sticking out. And he says, but listen, my helmet records everything I see or hear like a security camera. If I run the monster recordings through my suit's computer, getting there, just patching in a thesaurus, and bingo, the translation might not sound entirely natural, but we're basically there.
So Gizmoduck is pro-confirmed.
He is just babble fishing away. He used Google Translate. Sure.
Also, just imagine, if we could just turn all of the garbage on Earth to ice cream. They would cause different problems, of course, but at least it would be something to do with all the trash.
It would be delicious.
It would be delicious garbage.
So I guess Neptunia is attempting to talk with them.
Mm-hmm.
They're all just kind of like, oh, well, they're eating their giant tub of ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the translator works because they decide to sit down for a chat, and the aliens explain that it was nice of them to show an interest and talk with them. I'm not sure. It's a little too hard to see who's talking in this panel because everybody's really small, but someone, I think it's Neptunia, says, you guys are a problem. We need to solve you. It's that simple. The aliens explain their background, that they come from a planet that had a great wipeout. Many years ago, our planet was beautiful and prosperous. Our main comestible... What does comestible mean?
Consumable?
Comestible. Our main staple was a naturally occurring phenomenon resembling your earthly ice cream, which effervesced? How do you pronounce that? Effervesced?
Effervesced, yeah. Okay.
Out of the ground. We called it Fenor. Man, I know this comic is for kids, but I feel like a dum-dum reading some of these words.
I guess you gotta learn them somehow, kiddos.
Oh, and to be fair, Neptunia says, Gizmoduck, that thesaurus is kicking in big time. Think you can keep their vocabulary comprehensible? And Gizmoduck says, check, I'll dial it down a notch. So thank you, Neptunia, for doing me a solid.
I know you. I just imagine now that Gizmoduck said, check it. Oh, look at how happy they are eating their sky ice cream.
And then I guess another enemy species of alien attacked because their world was attacked. Their most precious resource was stolen and invaded by galactic horrors known as the Blugs. They used a hypnosis ray to make us hand over all our precious Fenorb. And they stripped our world dry and left us with nothing. They had some culinary engineers come up with a substitute, but it lacked the vitamins to make us large as our parents, so they're half the size of their parents.
Oh.
And also their substitute apparently tastes very gross. But then they discovered a miracle. The scientists had a breakthrough when they were looking through the cosmos for a new source, and they found that Earth had ice cream, and it sounds exactly like Fenorb, but artificially created from a recipe. So I guess they were coming to Earth to get the ice cream because it's like perfect replacement.
Their planet sounds great until, their resource was stolen, but ice cream all day, every day.
Yeah, and they said, they're very happy with the ice cream. It's the stuff our world needs to be healthy and happy again. And Neptunia says she personally will never touch the stuff, which is fair. She is a giant fish. But they'll provide a recipe. Gizmoduck searches for one, and he finds a lot of them. And he says, do we know if they have cows where they come from? Morgana helpfully says maybe we should go for a vegan recipe in case. Because I guess, if they don't have cows, they won't have milk.
I'm sorry, aliens have been abducting cows forever. They have plenty.
Gizmoduck uses it to come up with an ice cream formula that should work for their planet. I guess it's vegan ice cream, which is... I don't know if I've probably had vegan ice cream and didn't even realize it, but I don't actually know. I know that, Disneyland has that, what is it, Dole ice cream, and it's
Dole Whip, yeah.
It's, whipped, and it tastes like, I don't know if it tastes like ice cream. I've never had it before, so I don't know if they have pineapples either.
That's what he just sent it to, that's what they're doing. They're going to live off Dole Whip now because it's a Disney property. It's the only thing that keeps the aliens alive. So Dole Whip, TM.
The aliens get back in their ship and they fly away and everybody waves goodbye. Gizmoduck has a giant hand come out of his chest to wave goodbye because why not? He's got big naturals and he's got big hands in his chest.
He's got a lot more room in there now so he can get to all the other stuff.
And then we hear slow clapping. Clap, clap. Very nice. And we turn around and remember that Darkwing was here the whole time and did nothing. So Darkwing says, it seems clear to me that I'm surplus to requirements here, so I'll just be going home. You've all done extremely well, no question, problem solved. It's just that this is, how shall I put this, not my milieu. Which I think is just his way of saying he's not big on the team player stuff, which is always Darkwing. We know this. So I'll show you that. I do think it's kind of funny that there's just like slow clapping.
At least he told them they did a good job.
He says that he's a loner, a street level kind of hero. I'm relieved in a good way. I'm not an aliens guy. It's good to know that should the need arise, there's someone out there who can deal with all this cosmic stuff. Because he's got more important things to do. And then he fumbles around and he pulls out a box. And it's got these little cufflink type things in them for each of the Justice Duck members. I don't know how to describe these, so I'll just show them to you. But it looks like he says, I've been expecting this day for a while, so I planned ahead. If you're officially a team now, you're going to need to keep in touch.
I guess we're keeping in the theme of Darkwing as an inventor.
Oh, that's true. Even though it's a different writer, maybe they carried that over.
Oh, they're all personalized, too. Gizmoduck has like a cuff that has the Gizmoduck logo. Neptuna's got a shell. Morgana's got a ring. Uh-oh, Dark. Are you proposing to all of the Justice Ducks? And then, I guess, the little pink flower is for Steggmutt.
I think it looks like a collar with a bell on it.
A hair?
Which is funny.
A hair clip?
It's a hair clip.
Okay.
So they're a little confused, and Morgana asks what it is, and Darkwing says they're signal devices that they can contact each other with at a moment's notice. If the need should arise, just a little something I threw together in the old workshop. And indeed, Steggmutt has a little flower thing. Let me show you.
It's a hair clip?
Yeah, it
looks like a hair clip.
It's like some kind of a hair
claw?
clip. I don't know what to describe it as, but it's definitely hair clip adjacent. It looks like it's got a microphone or something attached to it, too.
Sounds like a little Bluetooth thing.
And then Darkwing says, you're welcome. And then Morgana says, but Darkwing, where's yours? And he's looking away, all brooding and emo, and says, I love that you've got your own thing now, but it's not my thing, you get me? Don't worry, I'll still be there when you need me. I'll find you, okay? I'll find you, he says, as if he's leaving forever and they don't live in the same city.
Yeah. That they're all not just, 3 blocks away from each other at any given moment.
And he's got big shiny anime eyes while he says this, which is pretty funny. But Morgana is more than happy. She gives him a great big hug. And Darkwing gets on his bike and says, I shall take my leave. Crime never sleeps, and I have important things to do. Very important things to do. Farewell, Justice Ducks, until our paths should cross again. And then he roars off into the not sunset because it's nighttime. And Neptuna says, Pah! More important things to do. Who does he think he is?
Darkwing made it one issue of Justice Ducks before he left.
Before he exits.
Not even the whole thing.
Stage left.
Oh, he has very glossy eyes. Roar.
And then we see him approach the tower, kicks the door in where Goslin is playing video games. He's holding up ice cream and he says, Ix-cream? And then they hug, and we realize that the more important thing is spending time with Goslin.
Aww.
Which is really sweet. The end.
The end.
Darkwing will reappear throughout the series, but I think this was just their way of letting him step aside, because if it's called the Justice Ducks, I guess it would be, with Darkwing's ego, it'd probably be hard to repeat the same back and forth battle of the egos with him. So
yeah,
he's here, but the explanation they give essentially is that Darkwing just doesn't really care about dealing with those big aliens taking over the world style things. He'd prefer to stick to like more of street crime justice, which I can kind of see is I feel like it would be really hard for a writer. If I was a writer and I was approached and told to write a Justice Ducks comic, trying to find an explanation for why Darkwing would allow this to happen in character would be very difficult, in my opinion, just because of who he is.
Unless he was calling the shots.
Yeah, if he's calling the shots, and even then, I just don't think he'd tolerate it for very long. I would say that they'd have to move out of St. Canard and go elsewhere for him to tolerate it, because he's more territorial, right? Like, he doesn't really care what happens in the rest of the world. So, he does get dragged into, like, foul stuff occasionally, but that's only when he has to. But otherwise, he sticks within his city. So the only other thing I could think of is if they left Even if they left the planet. In fact, if they left the planet, that would make Darkwing very happy, especially Gizmoduck and Neptuna leaving. He'd be over the moon.
Hey, get out of here. Yeah, if you're busy doing other stuff, I'm going to have St. Canard all to myself again. But there were definitely episodes of the show that dealt with aliens.
Yes.
So I'm going to call his bluff on not dealing with aliens.
Yeah, so I think I don't blame the writer. I feel like it would be difficult to give him a really good in-character reason for why he'd be like, yes, I will allow Gizmoduck, of all people, save the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they kind of built up the power struggle through the Darkwing comics between him and Neptuna.
Exactly.
So he's kind of the leader of them, and it's interesting. I'm curious to see.
Yeah, so I will tell you that every story is like a standalone story. They don't go too far into making it overly complicated, which I think personally was a good choice. If there's only 5 issues and you've got such a large cast, when you have all the Justice Ducks, all these characters having to play a part, I think having it be more of with all these unfurling plots and stuff, that would be way too much. So
yeah,
I think it was a smart move on the part of the writer to have it a Monster of the Week kind of format.
Right. Yeah, no, it works. Yeah. It's kind of what the show was anyway, so there we go.
Yeah, and it's very cute. I enjoyed it. The art is good. I do think, like, the writing doesn't feel entirely like Darkwing, but I think that's just because it's intentionally feels like it's more of a homage to, like, the Avengers, that style of superheroing comics. But ultimately, I think it's fine.
I think that Duckburg is in shambles. But otherwise, Giz is going to have a lot of heavy lifting to do here. But
yeah.
Hi, Dark. So there we go. Justice Ducks, #1. Darkwing's bowed out. You get some ice creams. Oh no, the little lost bunnies are coming back. And I like that he's on brand with us. Crime doesn't sleep. So there we go. All right. Anything else you want to say about the comic?
No. We'll probably intersperse this in between Negaduck as we cover both of those back and forth. Like I said, Negaduck has 8 issues. As of right now, we have covered 3 of them, I believe.
That's about right.
So we've got a lot more Negaduck to go. This is a bit shorter, so we'll probably kind of move back and forth between them. I feel like we've got quite a list of stuff to talk about. Like, we've got plenty to work with. So yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So there we go. That's a wrap on Justice Ducks #1. We're always kind of nebulous as to what the next episode will be, but we have Quivering Quack on the docket, as well as the remainder of all these comic books that I haven't seen already.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah. Okay. So that is a wrap for us today. Remember that Darkwing, and we all know that crime doesn't sleep, and neither do we. We all scream for X-Scream.
heck yeah.